Folks, this is episode 5 of Quizzing in America. I am Jeremy Conman. I am coming to you live from Chicago, Illinois. And today I am joined by the one and only Bobby Roast Beef from Western Mass, a guy who I met a year ago and is one of the more entertaining trivia hosts I've ever come across and has one of the more unique and interesting games I've come across. So we're going to talk to Bobby a little bit about how he got into the business and the game that he runs, which I believe is called Speed Quizzing. Is that correct, Bobby? And welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Good to be here. It is speed quizzing that I use. And I mean, it's definitely kind of unique, but it's growing. Like we've got a lot of hosts in a lot of different markets that are really starting to expand with this.
Now, Speed Quizzing started, it was a UK guy that started it, right?
And then yeah, it was actually two brothers, the Leach brothers, John and Alan. And they had, in the UK, the pub quiz is just a part of life. It's a little different in North America, but over there, it's like as soon as you are able to start going to pubs regularly and make that a regular haunt, you're engaged with a pub quiz fairly early on. And there's a large population over there. They're huge into this. And it was one of these things where they wanted to try to get beyond pen and paper, because this is about the time when the smartphone had become very commonplace for a lot of folks. So actually, when they started speed quizzing, if I'm not mistaken, the initial speed quizzing before the name, it was a text, like an SMS type game. And obviously there's going to be hiccups with that, but the idea was there where you would have your answer would be texted over. And that's how it all kind of started. And eventually it grew into this point where they developed a host software platform that the host will run from their laptop. And then using a wireless router and creating a LAN network with, no internet, but just having a connection point, you could have these amazing little devices connect via an app, via the independent Wi-Fi, so you weren't relying on that Wi-Fi network carrying the credit card machine, the jukebox, the POS machines, all this other stuff linking everything together. You had a separate Wi-Fi network holding it all together, and there you go. Thus, you end up with like a live action game show in the palm of your hand.
So when did you first start hosting trivia? How many years have you been doing this now?
It's been 11 years now.
Okay.
I started in 2014, and the smartphone was still relatively new. There were a lot of people I would run into back then that were like, "Oh, I have a dumb phone, hardy har har." You know what I mean? And that was a cute little joke for like 4 or 5 years, and then there was a big turn where really you were an outcast if you were not carrying a smart device. It was a unique sort of situation. So then we found a lot of our hosts would go and carry like a Kindle Fire to have on hand for that random person that with either a low battery or didn't have a phone or, something like that so they could play. So it is inclusive. It's definitely much more inclusive these days than it was when I first started. But you only need one phone per team. So within a group of 3 or 4 people, most likely somebody's got an iPhone or an Android device.
Yeah, and it's funny. So I'm kind of a trivia purist.
Yes, you are.
I am I've been playing a long time. I prefer the pen and paper game, no doubt about it. I don't like the phone games, but your phone game was so unique among games that I've played that use devices. So one of the things is, one, like you mentioned, you kind of create your own network. So when I joined your game, when I played it last year, I wasn't on the internet. I was on your network.
Nope. Yeah, exactly.
And so one, I didn't really have the ability to, go and search for answers. And two, it's called speed quizzing for a reason. The time in which you answer makes a difference.
Yeah.
And what is very unique to your game is you don't actually need to know the answers to get the question right. Now, obviously, it helps to know the answers.
Oh, yeah.
But if I recall correctly, because it's called speed quizzing, you want people to be able to type the answers in fast. So they don't actually need to type in the whole answer. They just need the first letter of the answer. So if you ask me what the capital of Ohio is, and I think it's Cleveland or Cincinnati, I'm going to type in C, right. And I'm still going to get it right because the answer is Columbus, which seems weird, but it actually works.
It does. And the other thing too, that first letter question, is one out of four different types of questions that are in a keypad style round. So it's not like every single question works that way. And it also has to kind of like there's a little bit of nuance with it. We see this a lot when it comes to sports questions. So the first letter answer, I often have to throw a qualifier out there to remind people that, hey, we're looking for the name of a team here, a sports team, but the first letter I want is not of the name of that team, it's of the location of that team. And I typically will, almost to a fault, always use the example of the Boston Celtics because B and C, they're different, versus if I were to say the Boston Bruins, they would be the same. And I'll use that example, even if the answer is the Boston Celtics, I'll use that as the example as to not give any kind of a clue away. But I'll find a lot of players, they get adjusted to it really quickly. It's the new ones that'll be a little bit thrown for it. The other one that makes it unique is if your answer begins with the words the, a, or an, you need to skip those words. So something like the Lion King, the correct answer would be L.
Yeah. And so when you started doing trivia 11 years ago, was it at bars like because you have a background as like a DJ, right? You're an entertainer naturally. So did a bar just come to you and say, hey, we want to add a trivia night. Can you do that for us? Or did you say, you know what, these are starting to pick up. I think this might be something I want to look into doing. And then you found speed quizzing, or did you stumble across speed quizzing and go, boy, this is a great way to, bring some entertainment into some venues and me to, make some revenue and stuff, and then just start doing it. So how did you get into it in terms of doing it with speed quizzing and starting trivia?
So I've been in the DJ business for over 30 years now. I've been doing this a while, and I started real young working with a friend of mine. We built a company. And then when we were in college, we split off and we split the company right down the middle. I took the library, I took all of the music, and then he took a lot of the gear, the PA equipment that we used. And I worked for another multi-op company for a number of years. That's where I really kind of cut my teeth doing weddings and corporate events and things like that. More formal events than like school or college parties. And after I started kind of get some more of that, I took a break from the business for a little while, and I focused more on like live music and all that. And I was working in a career in television, and then real life happened, and I had a house and kids and everything, and I'm like, I don't know if you know anybody that works in broadcasting, but it is very, very hard to not have multiple side hustles if you work in television. It's very difficult. Like it just does not pay the bills. So I was scrambling, looking around for alternatives, and I decided I was going to get my business back in order. And I started with a couple of small events. And to sort of promote, I got back in there and I was reaching out to bars to just DJ on a Friday or Saturday night when I didn't have a party, just for the sake of getting a little bit of exposure and having my name come up, because referrals, that's sort of the cornerstone that I build my business on. I feel like I have the best clients because I generally know what I'm getting into in advance, so I can prepare for it for whatever the situation is. And I started to do that, and then eventually, toyed around with the idea of, as a DJ, my most, like, I'm not a club DJ. I'm not, doing these crazy live mashups or anything like that. Don't get me wrong, that's an amazing skill. It's just not what I do. My primary tool that I lean on a lot when I DJ is my voice. And something like a trivia night or a game show is right up my alley. It's perfect. So I really did want to get into that sort of side of it and fool around. But initially, I was just going to start doing pen and paper games. And this was, like I said, I've said this, I don't know how many times, but it was just bad timing. I was getting into this as the iPhone and the Android were starting to become something that people were carrying around with them regularly. And it just seemed like too much of a deterrent to put the effort in to write a quiz where somebody could just kind of damage everybody else's good time by just cheating. And I'm like, maybe I'll put that off on the back burner until I can find something else. And I looked around and I looked around and I looked around, and eventually I stumbled on speed quizzing just by accident. And that's when I got into it. And the beauty of it is there's a lot of folks that look at speed quizzing and they're like, oh, but they ask the question, well, can you write your own questions? Of course you can. You can write your own questions. There are software platforms that actually don't let you write your own questions. But speed quizzing offers you free content every time you activate the software. So you get a full 61 question game of general knowledge stuff, but you've got the ability to edit if you want it, if you want to kind of customize it. Let's say you have a question that's really, really difficult as a first letter question or a number question, but maybe as a multiple choice, it would be a better move. Well, you can edit it, go into the online question manager, make changes. I like to use them right off the rip because I have a unique way of doing it where I actually don't even preview my questions when I go and I host a game. With the exception of like something that's a corporate event where it's not the general public, like they're not getting any type of event where I would clean up the language. I
Sure.
generally preview the questions. That's usually
That's always smart. You don't want to,
yeah,
we're in that corporate world. There are definitely some, you know, maybe there might be an off-color question or a risque joke or something like that, which
sure,
it doesn't come across often, but yeah, you always want to be prepared for that. And so, yeah, you're right. I do find though that as easy as it would be for teams to cheat, it is actually a relatively rare occurrence. Like most people don't
yeah.
want to come out to a trivia night to then just look up answers on their phone. What happens
Well,
is sometimes you'll see a group that's there that didn't know it was a trivia night, and it's like, oh, we'll
yeah,
play. And they weren't prepared for it. And then they don't want to seem dumb. So then they start looking at on their phones because they really don't get the just
yep.
the protocol and that you're not supposed to do that, even though it would seem obvious. However, one thing I do love about the speed quizzing game that I played with you is it is almost cheat proof. Like
Almost, yeah.
I feel like, yeah, I could have probably looked up the answer had the guy I was playing with look up the answers, but the time it would have taken us to look up the answers as part the game kind of moves at such a pace that even if we got every question right, because there's the speed bonuses and everything,
Hmm.
it's unlikely that we would have ended up winning anyway.
Yeah,
And so it was like, and it was much more fun to try and get the answers in. And then, like you said, there were different varieties of questions. One of my favorite types of rounds you did and was the audio round. And when you
oh
do
yeah,
an audio round with speed quizzing, you're playing a song, and then every team gets a chance to buzz in, and the
yeah,
first team to buzz in gets to identify the song and artist, and they get bonus points if they're right. But every other team then either agrees or
yeah.
disagrees with their selection. And
Hmm.
if the team was right and you agreed with them, you get some points. And if they were wrong and you disagreed with them, you get some points. But it was, I don't know, it was just such a fun, innovative way to play trivia. Now, you do this how many nights a week?
I'm working right now 5 nights a week. I took one of those nights off the calendar because I needed a little bit more time. I was at 6 nights a week. At my busiest in 2024, I was doing 7 games in 6 nights.
Wow. All
Yeah.
right. That's
And
crazy.
and I'm 0-0. I am the only guy doing the games. I don't have a staff doing any of
Yeah.
this.
I believe you were telling me that last year when I met you. And
Mhm.
so, but speed quizzing, anybody who wants to run a speed quizzing game anywhere in the country can get a hold of speed quizzing. Was it like speedquizzing.com, right?
Yep. Speedquizzing.com. They can it's pretty simple really. All you need to do is the software that you use to play is or to use to host rather is free to download. There is the equipment that you do really kind of need to utilize. A lot of people get hung up on, using a lot of people get hung up on it because they think that we're trying to sell a device, a router. But really what we've done is we've created a router and we've specialized it and just created it so that it does one job and one job very well. And, we recommend people use that because if they end up running into a situation where there's a Wi-Fi interference or they have teams dropping for one reason or other, they don't understand why. And a lot of folks aren't necessarily IT professionals, but here's the thing, I'm not either. But I'm the US tech support crew, you know? So
Yeah.
I get the phone calls, and it's the first question I ask is, "What are you using for a router?" And if they explain that, "Oh, we're using the house Wi-Fi or something," there's so many variables that could be in there that if they're at an event, using the speed quizzing product is definitely advised. And it's a low barrier of entry in order to get into speed quizzing. Like I said, the software is free. The router, you could use the lowest cost router that we have is a $50, we call it the Pocket Hub. It's a small little travel router. It does fine for most events, but we've refurbished. There's a brand of router out there called Ruckus that we've gone and customized, and we sell those for about 120, $130, and they're more like the iPhone of using, of a
Yeah.
device where if there is Wi-Fi interference on a specific channel, it will detect and make the change automatically. You'll never have to do that.
So how
Um,
many do you know how many people around the US are running speed quizzing games? Do you have that information or no?
um, Around the US specifically, no, but I can tell you at any week of the year, there's over 2,000 games that happen.
So they're going up all around the world
All
then?
around the world. Yeah. And the two
Wow.
primary hotspots are in Europe, in and around the UK, and then the US. They're the primary, but we have hosts in South Korea, we have hosts in parts of Africa. We have pretty much anywhere where English is the primary language that we have hosts that are hosting this game here.
And if people go to speedquizzing.com, can
Mhm.
they find out where a speed quizzing game might be if there's one near them, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
They can do that there. And they can even just go to SQ Finder and it'll show up an entire map and you can filter by day. So if you're, and I tell folks all the time that play my game, when they're, in the summers when they go on vacation, I'm like, if you guys are going somewhere, look on SQ Finder and find another game. And, that way you can try somebody else's, flavor of speed quizzing.
So now you go by the moniker Bobby Roast Beef. Tell me about that. Where did the name come from? How long have you been using it since your DJ days? And then, I mean, because it's obviously a personality.
Oh, yeah.
When I met you, I think I told you, I don't know if you're aware, Johnny Goodtimes in Philadelphia runs Quizzo. I
Yep.
talked to him for the first episode of this podcast, actually. And you kind of reminded, because you both have the, kind of the stage name moniker, and you
Oh,
both
yeah.
have just a great personality and clearly are kind of made for doing something like this. So
So there's kind of a big ball of yarn here for the name Bobby Roast Beef, but where it actually came from was, like I said, I took a break for a while and I was playing music, and I was working with this one band. We were setting up a rehearsal space to get ready for a handful of shows, and we're setting up, and the bass player. We were just having a conversation, and my oldest daughter was she was maybe one at the time, and he says to me, he's like, "Oh, so what'd you do this weekend?" We're just making small talk, and I was like, "Oh, I was hanging out with Chloe, and we did, we went to this picnic or whatever. We did such and such." And he's like, "Oh, that's cool. You and Chloe hanging out all Bobby roast beef style." And he said that it was just a riff off of a character from Goodfellas, Johnny Roast Beef, who
okay.
met a very untimely end. And it was at that time where I was like, that's a handle. That's what I'm going to start using. And so I started using that as sort of a stage name all around. Even back then, on the rare occasion where I would DJ an event, people remember Bobby Roast Beef. They
That is true.
remember they'll remember that. They won't necessarily remember DJ Rob. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like there's a million of those. People remember, and I'll do a wedding. And like I said, most referrals. So like people will. It's only ever costed me having this name. Only ever costed me one event, and I guarantee it was an event I would have been fine not taking. You know, it probably would have been so boring, and
Did they feel Bobby Roast Beef wasn't classy enough for their event?
that's what it
Okay.
was. And I was like, okay, you are not for me, and that's fine. But what's interesting is all of the English guys, all the UK hosts that know me and have conversations, they all think that Bobby Roast Beef is a little nod to the English tradition of the pub quiz and the fact that roast beef is a Sunday staple. And I'm like, you do you, boo boo. It's fine.
Sure, why not?
Whatever.
It works on multiple levels, That's
Exactly.
yeah, I mean,
Exactly.
that's great. So now with speed quizzing, because of the way the game is styled and everything, we're not going to run an actual speed quizzing game, but
Yep.
I will throw this out there just to get. Do you have any like favorite questions or anything like that? I don't know, anything you've asked recently that you like, and we'll at least throw a couple questions out there, and I can see how I do.
So there's a favorite question. It's a little adult oriented. And I
Mm-hmm.
loved it because it was, and I'm not going to necessarily give the answer. You can do the research yourself if you want.
Sure.
The question was, according to, and I forget what the magazine was. It might have been like Sports Illustrated or something, or something like that. And that wasn't Sports Illustrated. It said in a panel of 100 vegans, if a partner were to swallow, would that consider being breaking their veganism or not? And the options were, yes, it would be breaking veganism. No, it would not be. C, it was if both parties consent, it is not breaking veganism.
Right.
Yeah. So
That is, yeah. That I don't know.
yeah,
I don't know how trivia that is, but it's an
I mean,
interesting, it's an interesting moral dilemma, I guess. But
and that's the thing because a lot of people, and it's funny because I was doing this is when I was doing a brunch trivia and then a dinner trivia, and the dinner trivia was at a pretty nice restaurant, and I was
yeah,
like, this is where the ratio of players is more like 75-80% of them are brand new, like they've never played. It's attached to a really nice hotel, so a lot of people are playing for the very first time over there. I get a very small window of people who are regulars that come in because it's a nice place and it's not exactly super affordable. You know, you're going
yeah.
out for a night. You know what I mean? The average spend in this place is like about $60 a person, versus most of the bars that I'm at, it's probably like 30. So it's a big, big difference. And I made the better judgment to just skip this question. When I saw it, had a little giggle because, like I said, I don't like to preview my questions. I had a little bit of a giggle and I skipped it and I saved it for my Tuesday night game because I knew that they were going to
That
get it.
that crowd would appreciate
Yep,
it, right? Yeah.
exactly. So I went back and I popped that into that game and I used it and it got a great laugh. People enjoyed it, you know. I like making people feel a little bit uncomfortable, you know, when I'm doing my games, a little bit, either from anxiety of like the buzzing around, or sometimes like especially with the buzzing around, it's my favorite. It's when somebody buzzes in and they know that they messed up. They
Yeah.
know
They're
that
a
they
little
should have,
anxious on the buzzer.
yeah, they should have hesitated, even if they're new. I don't really give them any kind of a pass. I just go right up to the table and I lean in and I'm like, so what do you think? What do you have the opportunity to pass? And there will be, you know, regulars that'll be like, pass, 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 time's up or whatever. And I'm like, oh no, I like to watch them squirm.
Yeah.
Let's they made this mess. Let's see how they get out of it. And every once in a while, they'll get it right,
Which is
which
beautiful.
is
That's a beautiful thing,
amazing.
right? Like when you
Yeah.
don't have a clue and you just say something. And in fact, there's a new version of Jeopardy, Pop Culture Jeopardy, and I
Oh
watched an
yeah.
episode the other day. And you play as a team of three, and a team of three. I think it was a daily double they got, and I don't even remember what the answer will. I don't remember what the question was, but the answer was who is Claire Danes, I think. And they
Yep.
clearly didn't have any clue, but there was enough in the question. They knew it was an actress from her generation.
And they
And the
can put it
guy's like,
together.
who is Claire Danes? And like, clearly didn't know that that was the answer, but it was the answer. And Colin Jost was like, yeah. And it's just, like, you don't see that often on a show like Jeopardy, but I do see it as a pub quiz host a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
times for people just they take a wild stab in the dark, and
Yep.
sometimes once in a blue moon you hit the bullseye. So all right, so we're not going to play a speed quizzing game, but like you said, there's speed quizzing games really all over the world. So
Oh
no
yeah.
matter where you are, you can go to sqfinder.com. Is that the
Yep.
website? And you can find a speed quizzing game that might be near you. If there's not one near you, maybe the next time you're on a vacation, you'll find one in your area. If you're ever in Western Massachusetts, I cannot recommend enough checking out a Bobby Roast Beef game in person. I was very satisfied with the game that I played, and I can't remember. We either got second or third. I can't remember. We didn't win. I know that, but we did.
You
We
guys
did
did
walk
pretty
away with
good.
a
Yeah.
gift card, and but it was a lot of fun. And Bobby, you were such a great host. And you also, of course, do private corporate trivia
Oh
events and,
yeah.
and all sorts
Yep.
of things like that. And have you traveled for those too? You don't just do them in Western Mass,
Oh
right?
yeah.
You've gone all
I
over.
travel all over the place. I've done shows in Vegas and Atlantic City, and you know I've been around like the New York and New Jersey area quite a bit. So I'm if the work's there, I'm gonna go for it.
That's good. Well, I,
Yeah.
I actually just booked a gig for myself, which part of the reason I was out there last year. Same
Hmm.
company booked me to come out again in April. I'm not sure I'll get out to Western Mass, but I may. So you may see me in
Absolutely.
April at a game.
Good.
But I want to thank you again for taking the time to talk to me. This is going to be a shorter episode than normal because we don't have a game that we're going to play. But again, I want to encourage everybody. If you want to try a different type of game that maybe you're not used to, if you're hesitant to play a phone game, a smartphone game, and you're a pen and paper purist like myself, this one is definitely unique and different and worth giving a whirl to, especially if it's a Bobby Roast Beef game. So check out Speed Quizzing, and I'll hand it over to you if you have any last words of wisdom, Mr. Roast Beef.
Well, thanks for having me on, Jeremy. First off, it was amazing to have you at that show. And it's great to be on this podcast here. So I appreciate that. Thanks so much. If anybody is interested in my regular schedule, are interested in checking out one of my games specifically, go to bobbyroastbeef.com. And if you have an event coming up and you want to try to incorporate this there, you can check my availability too, right there for private events. So I appreciate it.
Absolutely, and he is a great host. Like one of, and I've played all over the world. You're one of the best I've seen. So
I appreciate it. Oh man, that's awesome. I appreciate that.
Absolutely fantastic.